So this is what we had the last time. This is the architecture. If you were on this call the last time, this was the architecture we worked on. We worked on it in the console, right? But just because we want to extend the solution, I don't want to do it again from the console. Instead, I put it as infra as code, which is a skill you have to learn as a DevOps engineer. So I put this in a template, and now I want it, because I want it to be reproducible. So what I'm just going to do, I'm going to go to my terminal, and then I'll just bring it up, bring the infra up, okay? So I'll do Terraform apply. But again, it's really everything we've done before. So I'll do Terraform apply. And Terraform apply should tell me it wants to create a number of resources, right? So there are like 38 he wants to add. Inside of it, there's a load balancer, there's database, everything that you saw in the page is trying to bring it up. So what I'm just going to do is, yes, I actually want you to bring everything up. I'll say Terraform apply. So it's going to bring up a number of things. We'll just have to be patient because it has to take its time and set up. But just so you know, it's actually trying to set up the things you see here, right? So it's going to bring up an ALB, an ECS cluster, one task definition, and a task. It's going to bring up a database, and then it will set this up. So when it's done, I think it should just give us an ALB DNS that I'm going to use in the browser to pretty much see the services live, right? But if you remember, we did it live on the call last time. But because that's not the essence of this class, I don't want to go back to that. I don't want to go back to scratch, okay? So we're just going to be patient. We're just going to be patient. It's going to bring stuff up. Let me see if a VPC is part of what it's bringing up. So let me see. I think this is ECS, the networking part of it. There is a VPC actually. So let me zoom in a bit. So if you see there is a VPC, there's for those who joined me, I was asking, where's the NAT gateway, all that, because sometimes I abstract this. It's not every time I'll be telling you about a VPC, but here it's pretty much just bringing up a simple VPC with 2 public subnet, 2 private subnet. It needs a NAT gateway because we want the task in the private subnet to be able to go to the internet. We just want a single NAT gateway, but these are standard stuff, right? We've also done this manually before. So as part of setting this up, it's going to bring up a VPC. It's going to put the load balancer in the public subnet. It's going to put the EC2 tasks themselves in the private subnet. It's going to create the connection from the ALB to the ECS, right? So that's just what we're waiting. Then once this is up, we can now extend the solution with what we want to build. Cool. So let's give it some time to be up. So it will give us an ALB. It's going to give us, I think while we're doing this, I think I did work on ECR before. I'm just going to go and delete that repo because I want us to create it from scratch. So there's like a webhook receiver we're going to build on the call. Just going to delete it because I want us to do it from scratch, okay? We're going to use ECR here. So this diagram is still valid. While that, the infra is coming up, right? What we did the last time is that we looked for, we typed Ghost, I think it was Ghost CMS, right? We did, right? If you remember Docker, we opened Ghost, we went to the official image, we saw the image, we ran it with ECS. So we just took a container from a blog CMS, more or less like on docker.com. We just took that container and we ran it. We basically just ran it. And that's the flexibility ECS gives you, right? You just take a container and it's live. We just, in a couple of hours, we just, exposed it live to the internet, right? But again, if you think about it, most applications, you don't have just one service. There's usually multiple services talking to themselves. So what we're going to be doing on this call is to take that old service that we built and extend it such that we can see one service talk to another service in ECS, right? Because we don't want a situation whereby we're just talking about one service, ECS just bringing up one service. We want to show that, yes, from one service, you can also talk to other services within ECS, right? And then see how we can actually put something on top of that, the ALB solution that we have. Cool. So what we are going to be doing, but the good thing again, there is that we are actually going to be building our own service. So here we use Docker as an example, just so you know that you can use what already exists. But again, you can also build your own container from scratch, right? Which is what we're going to be doing. In this case, we'll build a small Python service, and I'll show you more or less like, how it is in the DevOps world, where there's like a programming language, something is built, it is containerized, you can test it locally, and once you feel it's good and it's nice, you can publish it to a repository. In this case, we'll be using ECR, and then we'll use ECS to run that service, okay? Cool. Let's go back to infra as code and see what's happening. I think here is creating the RDS instance. If you notice the last time when we were creating it in the call, it took time, so we just need to give it some time. While this is ongoing, let's check the app that we're going to be building, or the app that we want to, with the second service that we want to work on, right? The first service we worked on, we just pulled something from GitHub, from Docker. But in this case, we actually want to author our own container, okay? Where do we start from? first of all, let's look at the service. One of the simplest services you're going to see, we're using FastAPI here, right? So we're just creating a very simple service that says when you go to the home page, it's going to send you a message. There is the one I'm really passionate about is the one for the post. There is like a post endpoint that says you are going to handle the webhook request. So when a request goes there, basically just it's not doing anything. It's just logging. I received the webhook, blah blah blah. It's just pushing stuff, and that's it. Very simple service. And then there is like an endpoint that says if you're looking for the health, if you're trying to check if this service is healthy, hit this URL, right? So cool. That's really a small service. That's how most applications are today. The developers will have an application that is running. It has a number of endpoints that needs to be exposed. It has like a health check endpoint that you may want to use, whether it's in ECS or is in Kubernetes to check if the service is healthy and all that. But that's it. It's a very simple, small service. The question is that most times when you have a service like this, right, you want to run the service, right? Sometimes you actually want to run that service locally to actually see if it's working first before you even choose to push it to a container registry. Because the whole idea is, first of all, you need to vouch that your service is working locally, okay? So what we're going to do is that I'm going to go into this webhooks folder. So I think I'm just going to copy the full part here. So copy part and just cd into the part. Remember, we still have infra that is developed that we kind of trying to bring up on the other side, but we're just going to go here, right? So we're inside the webhooks directory. That's where you have the Python, the app.py file. The next thing I want to really do is there is like an environment I want to activate, right? Because there is like a requirement file here. This one, it has everything that needs to be installed, FastAPI and UVCon, right? Just if you want to host like an application, you can use a framework. In this case, we're using FastAPI and then we're using UVCon to serve it. But again, if you look at it, it's just a simple web app, just very, very simple. So we're going to take this web app. What do we need to do? I think I have a set of instruction here in terms of what you need to do. But most importantly, if you don't have UV, you can install UV. UV is just a package manager. If you know pip, UV is just another one you can use. I have a simple step here where you can just install UV. It's also in there. If you go to their website, you see the documentation. And then once you are there, the next thing you want to do is pretty much, you want to create I think you want to install. So UV pip, install the requirements of PHP, the requirement.txt file that I showed you. And then you can do source activate. So more or less like you're activating an environment in this case. So I'm just going to do this, right? So I've activated the environment. You can see here, it's showing webhooks, right? Now, the question is, what do we do next? Let's run the service. So I'm just going to do this. I'm just going to do UVCon app. App is just saying app, and it's also saying app, right? So app.py is the file, and then the app itself that is making reference to is actually the FastAPI application, okay? But that's basic Python. But the point is that I'm just saying UVCon app, and then the host, I'm exposing it on 000 on port 8000, right? So I want to run this application because usually the applications you run on Docker, what we call DevX, developer experience, sometimes you have to run it locally. These services are not just, you don't just take the service and throw it to Docker. No, you have to run them locally, understand the service and see how you can use them, right? So the thing is, I have the application running. I can actually go to localhost. So it's actually running here. So I can do command click. I can open this one in the browser. Yeah, it shows the application is running. So on my local machine, this service is running. But it doesn't end there because, this is a developer working on their local machine. They're testing stuff. But at the end of the day, they want this service on ECS. They want it to run on ECS. So I have it running locally. You can call the other endpoint if you want to, but at least the basic endpoint is working, which is fine. I think this one is saying there's a favicon.io that is not found. It's not the issue, but you can see here there's like a HTTP 200 response code that we got. So the app itself is working. Let's now go to the Docker file. A Docker file, I think I've also shared Docker file in the past, but it's just basically a blueprint telling you exactly what needs to happen for the application to run anywhere you take it to. That's the whole idea of containerization. So here we are talking about the base image. If you check my website, there's a place I introduced Docker just in a way you can quickly just start, gaining results by just using it. But the whole idea, you start with the base image. In this case, we're using Python 3.11. We're copying, this is just trying to install UV in the machine, just trying to get UV installed. And here we're installing the requirements, right? The requirement.txt is really where we are saying, this is what I need to be installed on that container for this application to work as expected. So we are saying run this installation, right? Once we are done, we're saying copy app.py copy app.py into the current directory. The reason is because app.py is the application. We need it for the application to run. And here we're saying expose it on port 8000, right? So that means 8000 is really where it's going to be exposed. And then we are running the application and binding it to that 8000 port. So that's it. Once this is run, you have a Docker container that basically says, okay, I have packaged the application for you and I've exposed it on this port. Please, you can talk to me now. And that's really everything. There might be more things you want to do in a container. It depends on the app. Here's Python. So if you were doing PHP, if you were doing Golang, if you were doing, they have their own different steps, right? But honestly, these steps are kind of similar. Cool. So we think about it. We've done this already. We have a small service. Usually, the DevOps engineers are not responsible for that service. But if you have the knowledge, it's good, right? But we own many of this part of the system where you're having containerized solutions for it and then pushing it to the cloud. So at this point, I would say we have our Docker file, we have app.py already set up for us. Let's just see how our infra is doing. I think I'm seeing this error. I think I know why. So I'm just going to delete. It's trying to set it up, but I think it's saying I have a secret that is already in use, and it wants me to delete this. Pretty much delete the secret. That secret is already scheduled for deletion, so I need to remove it. It's telling me that this secret is already there and I need to delete it. So what I need to now do is go back and do AWS secrets manager, secrets manager, then delete. I think it's delete secrets. Let me look for the correct secrets manager, delete secrets. Let's see, delete secret is the right thing. And then the secret ID is what I need to give it. So secret ID. This is not part of what we're supposed to do, but that secret is there. Force delete without recovery is really what I want to add so that it can be deleted and it's gone. So now it's gone. So it's gone. What I just now need to do is run Terraform apply again so that our change can take place. Okay. So these are also some things you face when you're trying to do Terraform apply. Maybe there's some steps that you need to fix manually. Okay. So that's one of those steps. So I think it's creating the secret now. It is creating the secret. So let's give it some time to create the secret, because the old one it was trying to delete, it said that there's a secret that is already there that is waiting deletion, because usually you can actually delete a secret, but it's not completely deleted, right? It's kept somewhere. Now our resources is set up as expected. So what I can go and do is just check ALB, right? So we'll go to load balancer. So it's EC2. We'll go to load balancers. I'll check this. What I'll do is I'll go to the security group. I would edit the security group in a different UI just to make sure that nobody can access this URL unless me, like just from me alone, okay? So I'm just going to do custom my IP. I'm doing it on the separate screen, allow my IP. I just don't want any other person to test this. Just want to test it alone. So I've done that on the other side, and I just don't want to show my IP address, but it's done. So what I'm going to do is you still can see my load balancer, right? I think you still can see my load balancer. So what I'm going to do is just check the DNS of the load balancer. This was actually done for us by Terraform, okay? But again, we've done it in the UI. We just didn't want to go back to that entire step again. So if I do this and I paste, sorry, I think I pasted the wrong link. I'll do this. Let's see. It's not allowing me this time. What's happening? Let's see, HTTPS. I think that's the problem. You have to check this thing. So HTTP, okay, it says the service is temporarily unavailable. So to me, that's not bad, because it's temporarily unavailable. It means that, yeah, the service is trying to boot. Remember, these are some of the things you can also plan for. In this case, the containers obviously are still trying to register themselves, but it's saying we'll be back very soon. So let's give it some time. What we can also do, we can go and check ECS and see what's going on. Okay, let's check our service. Is it running? Is it coming up? So you can see one is running. We have a cluster. It has one service. It's the core service. It has one task. The task is running. It's not complaining. So we can also check. If you remember the last time we checked logs, you can see logs. It says everything looks fine. Created all the tables and all the database. So it's fine, right? So if I come back here and refresh, it should run. So this is what we built the last time, if you remember. The only difference is that we built it in the UI, and we didn't want to do it again. Like there's no point doing this from scratch just to show the additional extensions that we need to have. But at this point, we have a load balancer that is running a Ghost container all pulled from Docker, and it's, making them live via a load balancer endpoint, right? So this correctly describes what we have in this diagram, right? So ALB is talking to ECS, behind there's a task definition. Cool, we are good at this point. But again, remember that we said that we want to expose an additional service apart from the service we already have. So we want a situation whereby the Ghost service is talking to another service, but that service is owned by us, right? So that's really what this class today is about, right? Where we can expose a different service and use it, right, inside of ECS. So what are we going to do? If you remember, I was back trying to show you what we were doing in the console, more or less like here. We now have a Docker container. So if you see our Docker container is here, that we have our app, our Docker file is here. We just now need to publish this to a container registry. The other one that we were using was in Docker Hub. It was made by someone for us, but in our case, we need a different service. If we go back to the diagram, what would that look like? We have a service, we have a task, we have a number of tasks, but we want to expose a different service, right? That this other service is going to be able to communicate with. So how do we do that? What we are going to do is we'll go here. We'll look at some of the things that we need to do. I think I did put them here in the steps just so that I'm not running them as I want to. So what I'm just going to do is export my account ID, my AWS account ID. So I'm just going to, first, let me clear this and make it a bit bigger. So just going to just do export. What I'm trying to do is just put my account ID in the environment. So what I'm going to do is just copy my account ID. It's here. Just going to copy it and paste it here. Okay. So my account ID is in that environment. So what I want to do is, first of all, the application is there, but I have to build it. I have to build it and package it as a container. So I have to build it and package it as a container. So that's really the next step. So what am I going to do? In this case, I'm saying I want to build the Webhooks service, right? I want to build the Webhook service, but in this case, I'm specifying a platform. I am specific. I say I want an AMD 64 platform, right? You can also have ARM, but in this case, I'm just going to do Docker build. So I'm going to do Docker build. No, I'm not in the right directory. So I need to go to Webhooks. That's where the service is. And then I'm going to run that command again, okay? So I'll just go and run that command again. So Docker build is building. It has built, and that's because I built it before, right? So I built the image before. But if you're just building for the first time, it's going to take time. And you can see it's using some cache layer, right? So it's not redoing those steps again and all that. So the next thing we want to do is we want to tag it. So we'll tag whatever image that we just built, we'll tag it in order for us to push it to our repo, right? Given a specific tag. But again, I know that we're going to push it to a specific repo. So what I'm going to do is create that repo in ECR. So let's go ECR, let's create a repository. If you followed me, we've done this a number of times. So I'll create a repository called Webhook Receiver. I'll just leave everything as a default. I'll create a repo, right? Good. We now have a repo. If I go back to where I'm coming from, when you build a container, the next step is really you have to tag it to a version. That's how you know when there's a change in the application, you create a different tag, right? If you don't know Docker, please see some of the things that I've said about Docker before on my blog, but you need to understand some level of Docker to appreciate DevOps or even working in the cloud, okay? It has to go hand in hand. So we will just tag. So what I'm just doing is I'm tagging whatever it is that is local on my machine to latest, and I'm tagging it to the ECR repo that I just created. So you can see my account ID, this is the full. If you also don't know, you can just go here and click on this and just copy. There's a summary here you can copy. So this is the repo URL. And usually most times it's like / the version of the image that you're using, right? So I'm going to go back there. I'm just going to tag it. So here, I'm just going to copy it. It's a long command. I don't want to be typing and wasting your time, but I'm tagging the image. So I'm tagging the local image to ECR, right? Once that is done, I'll copy the same one and then paste it here to push it to ECR, right? I've tagged locally. I just now want to push. I'll do push. It says what now? It says blah, 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 403 forbidden. You should understand when you say 403 forbidden, just mean you've not authenticated. There's a step here for you to authenticate. So I'll paste it. It's just, there's an CLI command. It's just AWS ECR get login password. You don't need to cram this, okay? Just have it somewhere. You use it a lot of times for your CI/CDs and everything, because for you to push to ECR, you have to log in, right? You basically have to log in. So here, I'm just going to run that command and log in. So when I log in, it's going to show login succeeded. And then the next thing, I'll just run that command again and then push. And this time, wow, it's working. It's pushing. So it has pushed the image from my local machine. It has pushed it now to ECR. So if I go here, refresh, go back to that repo, I click on it, and I refresh, and I do images. You see there's an image that we just pushed, right? The image size is this. You can see it. So this is our webhooks image that we want to build, that we want to use from Ghost CMS. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you something about Ghost. And this is me. I'm being practical here. So instead of building services that is hard to show you many of these things, I'm using something that is practically out there that you can tell anybody that I worked with this, right? Just to prove your experience, right? So sometimes you get to an organization, they have an application that is already working. Sometimes you are building an application from scratch. That's why you need to mix many of these things. So here I'm using two examples. One, we author the container from scratch. The other one, which is the one that is live, that is showing right now, we didn't author the container. We took a container that was already ready, that somebody built. It's popularly used. I just took it from Docker Hub and we ran it on ECS, right? And then again, I'm also showing you a different flavor of it where we can actually have our own container, push it to ECR and use it also in ECS. So in this case, I'm just going to go to this URL because that's really like an admin page, you know. So because I'm opening it for the first time, I'll say my simple website, right? So I think I have this ready. I'll just use Brainhill as my name, test at brainhill.cloud. Here I'm going to type a password. So I'm going to just log in, right? Good, I'm logged in. Cool. So while this is already logged in, I'll just leave it here, right? Now we need to set up the second service because the whole idea is I want this service to use another service. But that service is currently a Docker container that we just push to ECR. So we need to set it up in ECS such that this service that is already in ECS can talk to that service. Cool. So what we can now do is we need to go back to, we already have it in ECR. So if you go back to your diagram, it's kind of close to what we have here. We used this Docker Hub to pull the Ghost image, but we're using ECR to pull in our own custom image, right? Which is what we're trying to do. How do we get that done? In this case, I'm going to show you an example of how it can be done. But it's not the best example, but I'm just trying to show you a concept. As we go, I'll still improve on the solution, but it's also a possibility. So because you have to figure out how the services are going to talk to themselves, remember that this is a task, right? Usually it's a task, a service. Sometimes you also want a different service entirely, right? In this case, we actually have a different service. It's a webhook service. But again, if I have to think about the networking involved to have a different service and then have them communicate, I would have to do more, right? So I'm going the easier route. But as time goes on, I'm going to show you better ways of doing it, okay? So now what we're just going to do is that we'll bundle the both containers in one task, right? That's what we're going to do. But again, as time goes on, I'm going to show you other optimized solutions of how to do it. But for this place, just to keep it simple, we're going to bundle them together. So what we're going to do is that we'll go to ECR. So in this case, we'll go to ECS. We'll go to the Ghost service, right? And we're just trying to say that, okay, this service, we want to update this. So let's go to the task definition. We'll go to the task definition. Remember, the task definition is the one that has the details of the container, right? So everything about the container is the task definition. So if you were going to add a different container, that's really where you should be, right? So we're going to create a new revision. We'll create a new revision. So what we're going to do in the new revision, we have container 1 already. The good thing about ECS is that a particular task can host multiple containers. It can host multiple containers. So, but again, even before we host multiple containers, let's test what we're trying to do and then see how we solve it. Okay, so what we're trying to do is that we're trying to tell Ghost, so there's really here settings. If you go to settings, there's a place called integration, right? So you can do custom integration, and I'll say my webhook integration. Okay, I'm going to create that. It's created already. I'll say my webhook integration, right? And then I'm going to add a webhook. The webhook I'm adding here is that if something happens in Ghost, I want you to call a different service, and I'm going to put it here. And I'm going to say I'm just going to call it member added. Okay, I'll do this. I'll say whenever a member is added, please go to this URL. In this case, I'm going to do HTTP localhost, port 8000. Remember when we tested our local Ghost, the webhooks, it was running on port 8000 locally, right? So that's also what I'm going to do. So I'm just going to use my simple secret, and then I'm going to add. Okay, so what I'm just saying here is that every time I create a new member, please call this URL, call this other service that is for webhooks, right? That will interact. That's how applications work. Sometimes there's multiple services talking to themselves, right? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to do save. It's saved. So what I can do is I'll go to CloudWatch first of all. So what I'll do is go to CloudWatch, just go to CloudWatch, and then what we'll do is that we'll watch the logs. I think there is a place here where I can actually do I can pin these windows, right? I think there is a way to do it. I don't use it often. Okay, let me just let it be for now. If I can find it, that would be cool. But I'll go to logs, I'll check logs management, And then I'll check that service. I think I'm in the wrong region. So let me change. I think that should be in US West 2. So I'll go here, US West 2. And then I'll look for that logs. The logs is the one for ECS. I think it's this one, the Ghost ECS, right? So what we can do is that we can actually just start tailing the logs. We'll start tailing the logs and see what comes in, right? So this is the Ghost application itself that is online. So let's tail the logs and see what we get. But what we can actually do, can we try to create a member and see what happens? So we'll go here to members. So I'm going to close this part. So go here and do members, and I'll just add a new member. I'll say my first member, okay? And then I'll just say first at gmail.com. So first at gmail.com. And then I'm just saying my first member. I don't really need the note, but you can have it there. First member, okay? And then I'm just going to say, right? But remember, we've already saved an integration to say whenever you create a member, call a service, right? So let's see if we go here, CloudWatch. You can see, for example, there's really, because we are telling the logs, let's see what's seen. You can see it's saying triggering webhook for member added with URL, blah, blah, blah. So for a while, I think it's going to try to do its job. It's going to do well to try to call that service, but it's going to fail because we don't have a service that is listening there, right? So we don't have a service. I think we're still tailing, after a while, it's going to complain that it probably could not connect, and it's going to just say, I couldn't get it done, right? But if you see here, 21, 35, 30, 08, so I think it's the most latest is down, right? So let's let it refresh. But we know, I mean, at this point, you can see request to this. So let me zoom this in, okay, so that you can see it. Let me zoom back out. But when you check, the logs are here. It's clear. It's saying that connection refused. Can you see it? Let me zoom it just to make sure you can see it. It's clearly here. Request to port 8000 on localhost failed because connection refused. So the thing is, the service is actually doing its thing. It's trying to reach out, but it cannot at this point. There's no way because that service does not exist. So that's what we're trying to solve. We're trying to now. We're not trying to build a second service that's going to listen to that request and handle it, right? Because ideally, when you host with ECS, services are talking to themselves, right? So, I mean, sometimes the solutions is very simple, sometimes very advanced, where you have like service mesh and every other thing. But in this case, we're keeping it simple. So we need to fix this. We need to add a different service that is listening on 8000 that would answer for webhook requests. Okay. So what we'll go back to where we were before, right? We were in task definition. We had one container, right? And we said one of the quick ways of just solving this is to have a webhook container that is also part of the Ghost container. But that's in this case. Think about what we're doing. We're more or less like coupling the solution together. It's not best practice, but we're trying to. There are situations too where you need more or less like two containers to be part of one task, right? So we're using that as an approach here. But in subsequent videos, when you join me, I'll show you a better way of doing this, where we can have the tasks themselves. Because in this case, it means that every Ghost task is going to bring up a Ghost image, and then it's also going to bring up a webhooks image. You don't want that coupling because both of them might require different scaling needs, right? Sometimes you want more webhooks container, maybe less Ghost container. Or maybe you want more Ghost, so you want that independent scale, right? So this is one way of doing it. Because I have hosted ECS solutions where you needed two containers to be part of the solution, right? But in this case, we're also adapting it to something else. So what we're going to do, we add a container, and we'll call it webhooks, right? That's really what it is. For the repo, we're going to copy the repo that we have here. So let's copy this image, this entire repo. We're just going to copy it as is. So the repository URL is this one, the tag is this one, right? Good. The next thing we want to do is we want to map. So we're saying 8000. That's really where we expose the service, right? So 8000 is where we're mapping it to. Here, we're not going to specify any limits and all that. We don't need any environment variable. Remember the last time we used the environment variable where we had to supply the database credential, other information. Well, yeah, we don't need it. So we'll keep it as is. We want log collection. And the reason is I want its own logs to go to a different direction, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this to webhooks, right? Because I want to take the logs from the webhooks to be separate. Cool. So once we have that, every other thing you can still play with them, health check, container networking. There are many, many things you can do. Okay. But just to keep it simple, we're going to leave it as is. We don't have any need for volume. Monitoring, we don't really have any need. You can set up monitoring if you want. But I'm just going to create this, this task. Okay. So the task role I need to provide. Okay. I think we already have that provided from the original task role. Because we are just here, we're not touching the task. We are pretty much adding a new container. Okay. That's what we're doing. So what we're going to do is we're going to create this. So this at this point is a new revision, right, for ECS, right? So this is revision 5. If you go back here, you see this is 4, this is 5. If you go back to the services, for example, go to clusters, you go to this one, and you check the service and you check the task, you see that this is still running and it's holding the old revision, right? So if I move a bit, this is holding revision 4. But where the solution is in revision 5, right? So what we can do is that we can actually go back to the service just so that we don't wait for too long. We can update the service to use more or less like the recent revision. So I'm just going to go to this service and then I'm just going to update it. I'm just going to change the revision to say, update it to 5, the latest one. Cool. Because that's where the new change that we just added, that's where it is. So we're going to say update, and then we'll go back to the service and see what's happening. But this is basic stuff, because if you were here the last time, we did all this. We just did it. Now what we're just doing is that we're building a different service completely. And you saw the entire workflow. We started from our local machine. We tested the service. We crafted a small Docker file for it. More or less like, these are the set of instructions that you need for this service to run anywhere you take it to. That is a Docker repository sort of, right? And then we chose ECR as our container, like our registry of choice, and we pushed it there. And now we're creating we have a task already, right? So, and we're saying one quick approach for you to use is basically, you can put 2 containers in one task. Not the best, but I will show you other ways we can do it. But it will work for our own use case here. So we're saying, okay, for now, use one task for both containers, because I know that Ghost will want to talk to a Webhooks service, right? In this case, it's not a service. It's actually talking to a task directly, because we didn't really add a service for it, right? But sometimes you want to create that boundary. You want to have task service, right? But in this case, we're just adding the task. So 2 containers all behind one service, right? Cool. So what we're going to do is that we're going to go to task and see this one. This is pending. This is the one we should pay attention to, because now this one is going to bring up 2 containers, right? This is exactly what I was saying. There's now like a Webhook container. There's not like the main container, right? So this one is running. You can see their URI, right? You can see this is Ghost, but this one is talking to my repo, my ECR repo. So this one is inside of AWS. You can see the repo it's using. I'll refresh to see what's happening. Both of them are running, which is good news. It means they're not failing. It doesn't look like there's any issue. So that's some good news. So what we can now do is we can also go to CloudWatch and then also do the same tailing that we're doing here. We'll go and do it for the Webhooks container. Okay, so we'll do this. We'll look at it and then we'll start tailing it. Okay, we'll just tail it and see what is coming there. It may not have anything, so maybe a better way of looking at this one is let's just use CloudWatch Insights. Okay, so we'll go here and we'll just view in CloudWatch Insights, and then what we can do is that we can fetch the logs from the last 1 hour. So I'm just going to run query and see what's happening. Remember, in the cloud, even on-premise, how you troubleshoot things, you have to learn to look at the logs. You have to learn to look at metrics. You have to learn to look at trace. There are so many places that you have to get used to as a DevOps engineer or cloud engineer. But in this case, honestly, we're not battling with troubleshooting whether it's using CPU or memory. Here, logs is fine. Logs sometimes can tell you things are working as expected, or it can also tell you if things are failing. So if I run the query, after a while, I'm still not seeing any result just yet. But let me go back to ECS and be sure that those things are actually running. So we'll go to task definition. It doesn't seem like anything is a problem. So here, it looked like task failed ELB health checks. This one, I'm not sure why it failed, but let's see. This is now running. This is the latest one. And let's see if it's running. This is the container. How many containers are here? Okay, that's still the one running, right? So let's see. This one is the one running. This is 4. This is 5. It's deactivating it. It's stopping it. I'm not sure why at this point, but it looks like it's running. So I'm not sure. It doesn't look like there was an issue. Let's see the logs and see what we get. Let's see logs. So probe unresponsive. Yeah, like I said, you have to pay attention to the logs. I'm not sure. Why is it saying probe unresponsive? This is started. This is 16:14, 16:15. Probe is unresponsive. Let's see. Let's see what's going on. 1 is still running. 0 is pending. This one is stopped. Deactivating this one. What I'm just going to do is go back to the service here and just do a force update. Okay, so I'm just going to update the service. I'll just say force a new deployment. use the latest one and just update, okay? Everything looks fine. Remember, we didn't touch the Ghost service itself. We only added a new container. So ideally, I don't think we need to do anything magical. Every other thing is the same. So we're just going to refresh again and see what's going on and see what happens. But again, I'm kind of like wondering why we didn't even see anything in the logs for the Ghost and the webhooks logs themselves. It's kind of, yeah. But you can see, okay, now maybe it took time, but it's here now. You can see that it did tell us that, started running on this. Let's see in ascending order. You can see this is 1919, this is 1924. So it started server process, application startup complete, waiting for application startup, and then it told us that it was actually running. So it looks like we actually have a task that is running on port 8000 as it stands, right? But I'm not sure why the load balancer had issues. But let's give it a second try. But this is good news because it means that same service that we saw locally, we were able to push it to ECR, and just immediately ECS is already serving that container, and that's what you see in the logs. There's no error. These are all info logs. Okay, cool. So let's go back to task the container again and see what's happening. Let's see if we are lucky this time. Maybe if it's working as expected. This one is said deactivating. This is saying it's running 22 minutes ago. This is the one that we want, the task 5. So I'm not sure why that one is not running yet. Stop all. Let me just do stop all task so that it can actually start the new one. If I leave it like this, it's going to take time to. So stop all, close, and then let's give it time to see what's happening. So which other one is it doing now? So let's refresh, deactivating. Yeah. Some days, that's one thing about some of these things. Sometimes they just, but again, I know configuration-wise, I think we're good. We could see on the other side, the service actually started running. Right now, we're just waiting for it to be served from where it should be served from. But let's see. This one is already stopped. Scaling activity initiated by deployment, blah, blah, blah. This one is deactivating. What about this one? It's also deactivating. Let's give it time. Let's give it time. Let's give it time. So it looks like the service is now working. We have the service. It looks like it's active. It's running. Let's check the task. The last task that we actually did looks like it's running, and it's using the latest Ghost ECS task 5, right? So it's actually using that one, and it's running. And if we go back to the website, everything seems to be fine, right? Remember, the last issue we're having is that we're trying to make, so if I refresh this one also, like for example, I run this query again, this is just checking the webhooks logs. You see that there's no problem. Everything is is running fine, right? Everything is running fine. We just basically now need to do, we also need to check the other side and see what's going on. Everything seems fine. We're tailing the logs here, so everything looks good. Maybe we don't really want to tail the logs. Let's actually go and search. So we'll just go to this, we'll just view log inside, and then we'll just do the last 30 minutes, okay? And then we'll just run query to see what we get. So it gives us a number of information in terms of, so sort is descending order. So that means this is the latest. So everything looks fine. Like all the GET requests is working as expected, okay? So the next thing we want to do basically at this point is we want to now check our integration because we now have two containers that are running inside the task. So more or less like everything is still local within that task. So what we can do is basically check, we can go back to our cluster and see this one that is running. It now has the 2 tasks running, right? So not 2 tasks, 2 containers, right? Containers, there are 2 that are running. So let's go back to our admin again and see the integrations. No, in this case, I think just to test it, we can actually go back to members and try to create a new one and see if it's going to work now. So we can say second member, okay? Second member, okay? We'll just type this. We'll type second at gmail.com, and then we'll go second, okay? We'll do second, and then we'll do save, okay? We'll do that, and then let's see what happens. So what we can do is we can do run query and see, we'll refresh. We can see, let's see where it's trying to call the webhooks again, if it's doing any of that. Sometimes it takes time to show up, but let's refresh again. Logs are things you have to you have to pretty much, you have to get used to, okay? You have to get used to looking at logs. I've not seen requests to calling the webhooks just yet, but let's see. Let's also check this other side. Let's see if anything got to it, but let's see. Nothing yet. So means nothing has gone there. Remember, we are trying to see the two services now will talk to themselves, okay? So let's also refresh. Let's see. Let's see. It still hasn't happened, but it's going to happen. It doesn't look like it showed there's any error anywhere. Okay, couldn't blah blah blah. Couldn't get webhook secret for this. No webhook secret found. I don't think this is our own problem. This is long ago. This is 21, 24. We are like around here, so it shouldn't be an issue. Let me see. Let's see what's happening. Yeah, maybe we can try it again. Sometimes it just, sometimes it can. What I will do is I'll just edit the integration, right? So I'll just go back here, integrations. I'm just going to modify it, custom, modify, and then do this one. And maybe I'll just add, maybe I don't need to add this. If not, what I wanted to do is just to say, for example, add a new one to say member edited, and then let's do select events, member updated, and then I'm just going to tag, my simple secrets, and then let's try that, and then we'll do add, and then we'll save, so that we can actually try and edit and see if maybe editing a member is going to trigger it. Okay, so we'll go back here, we'll go to members, and then we'll just go to second member, and then we'll do second member. I can say second changed, and then let's save this and see what happens. So it's saved now. Let's see the request here to see if anything happens. Maybe I'll trim this down to the last 10 minutes. Okay, so and then I'll run the query again. Let's run the query and see if it's doing anything. It says request to this failed because of error none 200 blah blah blah. Interesting. So I actually made the request, but this time it failed. It said it's I don't know, this response. So what's the issue? Let's try this one in the last 30 minutes and run query again and see what happens. Oh, you say the method is not allowed, right? Oh, I understand. So, I mean, at this point, honestly, we've created the integration, right? So we can see the request got to the webhooks, okay? It got to the webhooks. I think I know what's happening. At this point, I think we didn't set the integration correctly. If you go back to your application, and these are the things you need to get used to, honestly. Whether it's you that you're not a developer, but you need to understand the application to some extent to be able to help when it is live, when it is deployed. You need to understand. Because if you remember, if you check the app itself, the webhook we're expecting is /webhook, right? So we're actually doing /webhook. So that's why it's not working, because the URL that is expecting is a post URL and it's /webhook. So we just need to fix that. So we'll go here and we'll fix those integration. And what we're just going to do is we're going to say we want this one. We'll just modify it. Instead of the URL, it's going to be /webhook. We'll update. We'll do this one. We'll say /webhook. Okay, and then we'll update it. Cool. It's good we're using a live application so that you see how troubleshooting is in the real world, right? But if you go back again and try, so let's go back and edit a member, one member that we have somewhere. So we're just going back here. We're just going to go to members, and then we'll go here, first member, and say first member edited. And let's see this time if it's going to work. Okay, and we're just going to save it. We're going to save it. So once we save, the next thing we want to do is to check again. Okay, so here we're going to check the main service that's trying to make requests to the other service. We're going to check and see if it's now calling it. Or we can even check this service and see if the request has gotten here. This one is saying the method is not allowed, but it's fine. That was the first error we're getting. So let's give it time and see if it sends again. So we're just going to run the query here and see what happens. Triggering, this was the last error we got, so I don't think it has tried it again. But let's give it some time. Let's just play with the other member. So let's go to second, changed again. Let's just save. And we can even add a new member and just go back here and add a new member and say last member. Okay, this one should work. Okay, we're just going to do last member. Okay, and then we'll just do last member here, and then we'll save, right? Last at gmail.com. Cool, and then we'll retry, save, And then we go to members. Okay. When we do that, what we can now do is let's refresh again. Okay. Usually these are things you'll be used to even in the real world. Sometimes you have to try things out. Again, that's why there's a dev environment, there's a sandbox environment. You try all the things you want to do, test all what you want to test. Then when it is good, that's when you promote it to production, right? So it's all the things we are doing here is all part of the things you'll be doing in the real world. Okay, so don't feel it's normal process. So we are just going to now run queries. If not, everything is going to be automated. They probably won't need a DevOps engineer. Usually, many of these things, you set them up, you check, put a health check in place, you test them for load. Sometimes you test them for read traffic. Make sure things are working as expected. So let's see if it's actually still trying to do. So request, this was the last one. This is 21, 38, and we've done 42 now. So by now we should have something reasonable. I'm not sure why it's just taking its time to do its thing. Okay, so this time he said this. Did you notice? He said triggering webhook for member added with URL, and there was no error. So maybe we finally hit the jackpot. So if we go back here and we refresh, you can see, yay, our request got here. So the first test task was able to call the second task, which is call the second container, which in this case is basically the container we authored from scratch and we added it to ECS, right? And you can see, for example, you can see the member that was added. In this case, I think the member here is last member, right? So the last one worked. If you check, there's also some other ones. I'm sure he tried after a while, but you can also see my first member. All of them have moved in, right? So it means that we've been able to connect both of them, right? We've been able to connect both of them. But honestly, at this point, if I go back to the diagram, what did we do? We have a task definition. Why is this? I think, let me just do Control Z on this diagram. Okay, cool. And then do this. So if you look at our diagram, what progress have we made? We basically have a service that is ingress, that is basically via the ingress. And then what we did was to expose it, and then we added a new container that is also serving traffic from that service. What else can we do at this point? Honestly, there's many more things you can do, right? We can set up a CloudFront distribution that interfaces between ALB and the services, right? So because ALB right now is kind of not nice, right? And because think about it, there are many things. When you open this, there are many static content that are showed in the website. Some of those static content will benefit from caching, right? And that's where CloudFront comes in, because you can cache those static content and then have all the things that are dynamic. Maybe you want to push that to the ALB, right? So whenever you think about CloudFront, usually it's you have to also think if your application is serving static traffic, it really makes sense in that point, because your static content can gain a lot of the benefits that CloudFront brings, because now you can cache those content in CloudFront. And then for requests that basically needs to get to the ALB, you have to wire them directly to the ALB. Okay, so let's see. But so far so good. I think everything looks good. Like everything is working as expected. The logs are fine. The service is still working. We've created a number of, so it means there's really actual connectivity between the application itself to the database, to the extra service. But again, let me remember that in this case, we went through an approach of having two containers in one task. In the real world, that's not what you want. But there are sometimes, again, let me clarify. There are sometimes, right? There's a kind of solution you're trying to build. You need two containers. I've worked in situations like that where you needed two containers in one task. But in most cases, you really have independent services that have their own independent tasks. And then you're just doing service-to-service communication, okay? But for the most part, you have multiple, each service can have one or two containers behind a task, right? And then you can pretty much have multiple services now that are communicating with themselves. In this case, we're keeping it very, very simplified and simple. We basically went the simple route. The route is we took one task and we put two containers, right? There are better ways, we'll do them as time goes on, but it's good. We went through this route, keeping it simplified, right? So what I'm now going to do is I'm just now going to go back to the diagram, go back to the service that has been launched for us, and then see how we can tear them down, okay? So what I'm going to do here is if I go to ECS, the cluster, I can see the cluster is running, the application is running here. What I'll just do is go to Terraform, honestly, because everything I created, remember that there was a task, I added two containers to it, but that task itself is controlled from Terraform. So I'm just going to go back there and just run Terraform destroy, okay? So I'm just going to cd one directory back and then just do Terraform destroy, okay? So we won't be able to going through the other details, like maybe putting CloudFront on top of it. Maybe the next time I come, we'll extend it again. Everything we've built up to this point, we'll put Terraform on top of it, launch it as IAC, and then start adding more things on top again, just to increase our ownership and how far we are going. Okay, so I'm going to do Terraform destroy, because again, I also want to be managing the time we spend. I don't want it to be a very lengthy session that you can't cover, that you can't catch up with. Okay, so right now you can see it's going to destroy a number of resources, like 38 of them, which is fine. That's intentional from me. So I'm just going to do yes. It's going to start tearing down things. At some point, it's going to get rid of the clusters that I created. So in this case, the cluster is here. It's going to tear that down. Like I said, sometimes you see an architecture diagram in AWS. There are many things that are abstracted. So the VPC details, some things are there, But honestly, when you begin to understand units in AWS, it just begins to make sense as time goes on, right? And if you remember, there are times we've talked about like VPC endpoints where you can have this communication happen without this task needing access to the internet. Those are things you can do. Instead of having Docker Hub serve these, you can basically pull the same container and throw it inside ECR and just remove Docker Hub completely, right? So that you can go to ECR and just use ECR completely for everything, right? So there's always so many approaches you can use to get something done. But again, if we go back to Terraform is tearing things down, which is good. I think now it's done. I don't know, it's destroying. Okay, public subnets are gone. The database, I think now it's destroying the database, okay? Maybe now it's destroying the RDS. Let's go back to see. Instances, okay, so it's deleting the instance. Once it's done, it's going to delete the cluster. And then we will say, yes, we've been able to tear down things. And yeah, I think if you give it a second now, it's going to tell us it's done after a while. Let's see. Okay, cool. Everything is going now. Everything should be fast. Cool, it's gone. So guys, the database has been deleted. It did take a while, but it's done. You can see the resources have been deleted. So please just make sure you clean up. Make sure you delete everything that you created. You can also keep it if you want to continue to experiment or do more things, you can. But we've deleted everything we did. Just to recap, I think the only thing we added was that we used Terraform to provision the old infra, and then we added a new container to the task definition so that the first service can talk to the second service. But the second service that we added, the most important thing you should take out is that we had a very simple service, Python, in this case, that has an endpoint / webhook that's handling the webhooks. And then we pretty much created a very simple Docker file, 15 lines of code, just for us to deploy that to ECR. And that was it. Once we had that, we saw that we could open the same application, and then it could talk to our new service that we exposed using ECR, from ECR to ECS. Okay, and I hope you found it useful. And I also said I think I did mention that the route we went to is that we went the short route where we had one task and we kept 2 containers inside of it. But that's like tight coupling in this case. But there's also another way of doing it where we could have like a Webhooks as a service on its own, having its own task definition, pulling from a different repo, and then you can connect the old service to the Webhook service. Okay, we'll touch so many of those patterns also as time goes on. That brings us to the end of this class. I hope you had a great time. So I'm going to stop the recording so that